Welcome back to my channel. This week we are doing something a little different than usual. Instead of just one recipe, I'll be sharing 5 recipes to eat throughout the week. I want to give you some easy meal ideas for when you're feeling uninspired. This is kind of a what I eat in a week video because it's honestly what I'm eating this week for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you're new here, welcome. Don't forget to hit subscribe. I share new videos every week and a bunch of recipes on my blog at cozypeachkitchen.com. This first recipe is for breakfast. It's something I eat honestly most days of the week with a ton of different variations. So let's get cooking. So this is something that I eat at least 3 times a week, maybe 4 or 5 times a week. I always have hummus on hand and I always have avocados on hand, and it makes a really satisfying meal. I'm using a bit of a fancier bread today. Sometimes I use just regular whole wheat sandwich bread. I'm gonna toast it in my air fryer, and then meanwhile I'll get everything else out of the fridge and get all of the toppings ready. For each piece of toast I use half of a large avocado. If I have a smaller avocado, I might use the whole thing. So I like to slather it with some hummus. This is actually a homemade hummus. I'll link that recipe down below in the description. I always put everything bagel seasoning on it just to add some flavor. And then I also added some hemp seeds. I just always have these on hand. They're a good way to add some extra omega-3s to your breakfast. I add arugula because it's a really easy way to get in a serving of veggies with breakfast. It also adds a nice zesty flavor. So then next up we'll add the avocado slices, and I always add some nutritional yeast as well. This provides vitamin B12, but I'm really in it for the flavor. On top of that, I add some pumpkin seeds. I prefer toasted pumpkin seeds, but I only have raw on hand right now. I also added some hot sauce after this because it is just a necessary addition. This is a classic grain bowl recipe. It has this light and bright tahini dressing. If you've never used tahini in dressing before, it's a game changer. It's really good and I highly recommend it. I'm using baby potatoes here and I'm just gonna slice them in half. I found these multicolored potatoes and I thought they just looked nice, but you can use any kind. And then I do toss them with olive oil. I'm not bothering with parchment paper or foil here. I just put them directly on the sheet pan. I put them cut side down. This allows them to get nice and golden and crispy, and I do not flip them over while they're baking. I'm going to roast them at 425 for 30 minutes total. You want them to be fork tender and super crispy when they are done. But meanwhile, you can gather the rest of the ingredients. I'm using French lentils. I'm rinsing and sorting them first, and then I'm gonna cook them 1 part lentils to 3 parts water. You want the lentils to be cooked through but not mushy, so keep an eye on them. They'll take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook. By the time they're done, your potatoes should be about done as well. I take this time to prepare the lemon tahini dressing, which is really quite simple. We're just combining tahini with lemon juice. We're also adding coconut aminos. You could also use soy sauce or tamari if you don't have coconut aminos on hand. This adds a little bit of a salty, sweet component. And I always add lemon zest just to brighten up the dressing even more. When you start whisking, it may seem kind of thick and like you're not getting anywhere, but just keep whisking. And then add water as needed to thin it to a pourable consistency. I find that I usually have to add about 3 to 4 tablespoons, but all tahinis have a different thickness. So really just keep adding water until it is smooth and pourable. Then the only other thing that we need to prep is an apple. So I dice up 1 apple. This is a good way to add some fruit to a meal. We're gonna toss it with the arugula. And I always squeeze some lemon on the apple, not only for the brightness that the lemon adds, but also because it will slow down the browning process of the apple. Now we can make our bowls. So we'll put in those potatoes, lentils, and the arugula with the apple. I'm also adding some pumpkin seeds like I did for breakfast. I really tried to overlap some of the ingredients in these recipes so that you're not going out and buying ingredients and then never using them again. Pumpkin seeds are a staple for me, so you will see them again and again in my recipes. This is one of my favorite dinners to make because it takes only 15 minutes. Genuinely, it takes 15 minutes. It's really simple. All you have to do is start by dicing up some tofu. I make it into 1-inch cubes. I'm not pressing the tofu here. I'm using extra firm tofu, so it's already quite firm and it already absorbs the sauce quite well without being pressed. Once you've got that ready, we can put together the stir fry sauce, which is made up of soy sauce. I'm using a reduced sodium soy sauce just to cut back on salt. Also adding in veggie broth, that's some toasted sesame oil, as well as some honey. You could use maple syrup or brown sugar. Fresh garlic and fresh ginger are necessary. Don't skip this step. It does add a little more prep time, but it is such a huge backbone of flavor to the stir fry that you just don't want to skip it. I'm cooking everything over a medium-high to high heat. So we'll start by cooking the tofu. I'm using a neutral oil here. You could use a regular sesame oil. I don't recommend using a toasted sesame oil because it will quickly get that burnt flavor. And then I'm adding in about 16 to 20 ounces of frozen mixed veggies. This is a stir fry blend, so it has broccoli and carrots and water chestnuts. You don't need to thaw them first. And yes, you could use fresh vegetables if you prefer. They'll cook a little quicker. We just want to cook them until they are bright and cooked through. These stir fry noodles are already cooked, so they're super convenient. They aren't vegan because they contain egg. So if you are looking for an egg-free option, you may want to go with something like lo mein or soba noodles, which you would have to cook yourself. Add in the rest of that stir fry sauce as well. And we'll just cook it for another 1 to 2 minutes. I'm also adding on some sliced green onions and some toasted sesame seeds. I love adding some seaweed here if you're looking for more of those omega-3s, but all of these garnishes are super optional. You have a well-balanced meal just with the tofu, veggies, and noodles. The nice thing about these ingredients is that they all last a while in the fridge, freezer, pantry, whatnot. So they're really great to keep on hand for when you just need to throw together a quick meal. This next recipe also comes together really quickly, under 30 minutes, and I like to eat it cold. It's inspired by this vegan cashew carbonara that I get at my local co-op, but it's not that. We'll call it a vegan lemon pasta. We'll start by making the cashew cream sauce, which is pretty simple. All you have to do is soak some cashews in almost boiling water. I do this for at least 15 minutes. I recommend doing it at least 30 minutes, an hour. You can even do it overnight if you have the forethought. And then I do reserve that liquid that they were soaked in. So we'll blend up the cashews and the liquid with some lemon juice because it wouldn't be lemon pasta without it. We're also adding in a little bit of olive oil. This will take a little while to blend, sometimes up to 2 minutes. So while that's happening, I'll prep the rest of the ingredients. These are sun-dried tomatoes and they add so much flavor to this recipe. So I'm just gonna dice them up into smaller pieces than they came in the package. And the cream sauce should come out to a nice, thick, creamy consistency. So I highly recommend reserving the pasta water when you drain off the fettuccine. The pasta water is super starchy and it really helps sauce stick to pasta. So I'll take just about half a cup of that pasta water and I'll put it back in the blender because the blender still has a fair amount of the cream sauce kind of stuck to the side. So I'll blend all of that up together and then add it back to the pasta. I like to add nutritional yeast to give it some depth and some cheesiness, and like I said earlier, it's a great way to add some vitamin B12 to your diet. To make this recipe more balanced, I will add in some white beans. Chickpeas would also be great here. We're also adding in some thawed frozen peas for that veggie component. And I'm adding in capers as well. These add a wonderfully salty, acidic touch, and they are a really important component of this dish. Sun-dried tomatoes from earlier. And just to really drive home that lemony point, I will add in some lemon zest. I do enjoy eating this cold, so I'll throw it in the fridge for about an hour before eating it, but you could eat it hot as is right now. This last recipe is stuffed sweet potatoes with some taco-inspired fillings. You could roast these potatoes 1 to 2 days in advance if you want. They'll keep in the fridge really well. We'll start by poking the potato with a bunch of holes. This allows the steam to escape, and then we'll toss it with a little bit of olive oil. And we'll roast it at 400 for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how big the sweet potato is. While that's roasting, we will make the black bean filling. I'm using a can of black beans with the juices. I'll add in 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon oregano, and a ½ teaspoon garlic powder. I'm also adding a tablespoon or so, maybe 2 tablespoons of adobo sauce from a can of chipotle chilies. We'll simmer it while the sweet potatoes roast. This will make the beans super flavorful. Now, as far as toppings go, you can get as creative as you like, but I usually stick to an avocado, which I just slice. You could always make guacamole, just add some onion, some lime juice. When the sweet potato is done roasting, it should be super soft. You should be able to slice it open very easily and mash it with a fork. If you want extra spice, you could add an extra tablespoon of the adobo sauce here. But otherwise, just top it with the black beans. Add some salsa, that sliced avocado, cilantro, and I told you that I love pumpkin seeds, so here are those pumpkin seeds once again. And that's our last recipe for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below in the comments. And hit subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.